History plays like a game of Jenga. One wrong move, and the whole thing crashes. But in this version, the pieces are volcanoes, missed alarms, and one very expensive pizza. Alexander the Great cuts the problem. Alexander was 22, already king, already leading an army into Asia. But before he fought the Persian Empire, he made a pit stop in a dusty little place called Gordium. Why? Because of a knot. The Gordian Knot was famous. No one could untie it. It was a twisted mess of rope stuck to an old ox cart. Local legends said whoever solved it would rule all of Asia. Most people gave up. Alexander didn't have that kind of patience. He walked up, looked at it, and said, "Nah." Then he pulled out his sword and sliced it in half. Boom. Problem solved. People stood there blinking. That wasn't how you were supposed to do it. But he did it anyway. And here's where the butterfly effect flaps in. The story spread fast. His soldiers ate it up. To them, it meant the gods were backing him. It wasn't just a shortcut, it was a sign. Suddenly, Alexander wasn't just a general, he was a legend. Within a year, he crushed the Persian army at Issus. Then he rolled through Syria, Egypt, Babylon, and all the way to India. City after city surrendered, partly because they believed he was destined to win. That one cocky move at Gordium, it built a myth, and myths win wars before they even start. After Alexander died at 32, his empire didn't last. But the culture he spread stuck. Greek ideas, language, and architecture ended up all over the Middle East and Asia. They even reached India. That fusion gave us Hellenistic science, math, medicine, and art, and helped shape early Christianity. All because one guy got tired of untying a knot and decided to stab it instead. Moral of the story? If you want to conquer the world, skip the puzzle and bring a sword. The honking that saved Rome. In 390 BCE, Rome got steamrolled. A Celtic tribe from Gaul crushed the Roman army at the Battle of the Allia. The survivors didn't regroup, they ran. Fast. The Gauls marched into the nearly empty city and started burning it down. The last holdout? Capitoline Hill. A few Roman elites and soldiers had barricaded themselves up there. The hill was steep, sacred, and surrounded by cliffs. Good defense, bad morale. Food was low, spirits were lower. And one night, the Gauls tried to sneak in. They didn't march up the front. They climbed the cliffside. No noise. No torches. Just slow, quiet, deadly. The Roman guards missed it. The dogs missed it. But the geese? They went ballistic. These weren't barnyard birds. They were sacred to Juno, the goddess of marriage, war, and politics. People weren't allowed to kill or eat them. They lived next to the temple and got treated better than most citizens. So when the Gauls crept over the edge, the geese exploded. Honking, wings flapping, total chaos. The Romans jolted awake. A guy named Marcus Manlius, no relation to the goose, grabbed a spear and shoved the first attacker off the cliff. Others followed. The sneak attack failed. Rome held on. Barely. Eventually, the Gauls took a bribe and left. The Romans rebuilt from scratch. They overhauled their army, reinforced the city, and swore they'd never be humiliated again. That promise turned into centuries of conquest. And yes, they built a shrine to those geese. The Latin word moneta, from the temple of Juno Moneta, later became the root of money. Why? Because Rome's coin mint was inside the temple. No joke, currency history traces back to those birds. The storm that sank an empire. In 1274, Kublai Khan, the Mongol emperor of China, launched an invasion of Japan. His forces had already crushed Korea, northern China, and most of Central Asia. Japan looked like low-hanging fruit. He sent a fleet of about 900 ships and over 20,000 soldiers. Mongol archers, Chinese sailors, Korean conscripts, everyone packed into boats built fast and cheap. They landed on Kyushu, Japan's southern island, and started torching villages. The samurai fought back hard, but weren't used to Mongol tactics. The invasion looked like it might succeed, until the weather decided otherwise. A typhoon rolled in. Mongol ships, made for rivers and calm seas, snapped apart in the violent waves. Thousands of troops drowned. Others were stranded on beaches and cut down by samurai. The survivors retreated in pieces. Kublai Khan blamed poor coordination. He was wrong. 7 years later, in 1281, he tried again. This time it was personal. He built the largest naval invasion the world had ever seen. Over 4,000 ships. More than 140,000 men. Japan scrambled to build seawalls and prepare defenses. But again, they didn't need them. Another massive typhoon struck, stronger than the first. Ships collided. Men were tossed into the sea. Supplies vanished. Over 100,000 Mongols died, many drowning in full armor. Only a few thousand made it home. Japan didn't lose a single province. The Japanese called the storms kamikaze, divine wind. They believed the gods had saved them. The name stuck. It resurfaced in World War II when Japanese pilots carried out suicide missions to stop American ships. Same word, same logic. Kublai never tried a third invasion. His empire eventually fractured. Japan, untouched by Mongol rule, kept its political independence and cultural identity. No Chinese-style bureaucracy. No forced Mongol overlords. Just centuries of isolation and a proud national myth born from two lucky storms. Genghis Khan's grandson built the biggest army on earth, and the weather laughed in his face. Twice. The name that broke the church. In 1491, a baby was born at Greenwich Palace. His name? Henry Tudor. Second son of King Henry VII. Not unusual, unless you're a clerk in charge of royal records and you accidentally spell his title with an extra H, giving us Henry VIII instead of Henry of York. It's a small detail, but historians believe the naming helped cement his position as heir after his older brother Arthur died. Arthur was the original golden boy. He married Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the King and Queen of Spain, to seal a political alliance. But Arthur died young. That left teenage Henry to inherit both the crown and, later, his brother's widow. From the beginning, Henry's reign was wrapped in superstition and symbolism. His coronation was celebrated as divine fate, and he leaned hard into the idea that God had chosen him. That mindset shaped every decision he made. When things went wrong, politically or personally, he didn't reflect. He rebranded. He saw problems as punishments, and his solutions always came with a scepter. That worldview, mixed with absolute power, made him more than a king. It made him unpredictable and dangerous. Fast forward. Henry marries Catherine. They try for an heir. 5 pregnancies, 1 surviving child, Mary, no sons. Henry starts panicking. He thinks God is punishing him for marrying his brother's wife. He wants out. But the Pope says no. In any other time, that's the end of the story. But Henry wasn't just a king. He was a king with a bruised ego, a wandering eye, and control over the English clergy. When the Vatican wouldn't grant him a divorce, he broke up with Rome entirely. In 1534, he passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring himself head of the Church of England. No more Pope, no more Catholic rules. He married Anne Boleyn, then Jane Seymour, then 3 more women after that. 2 were beheaded. 1 outlived him. The real butterfly effect? This wasn't just about wives. It changed England forever. Monasteries were dissolved. Land was seized. Religious wars followed. The Church of England became a global institution. And all of this chaos started with one man refusing to take no for an answer, and maybe a clerk who couldn't spell. The reign that turned rebels into revolutionaries. April 18, 1775, British troops were heading to Concord, Massachusetts, to seize hidden weapons and arrest 2 guys who wouldn't shut up about freedom, Samuel Adams and John Hancock. The colonists had spies everywhere, so they knew something was coming. They just didn't know when. That night, Paul Revere set out to warn them. The plan was simple. Ride from Boston to Lexington, spread the word, then keep going to Concord. But the weather had other plans. Rain slowed him down. Muddy roads, swollen streams, soaked lanterns. On top of that, British patrols were out in force. Revere made it to Lexington and warned Hancock and Adams, but he never made it to Concord. He got stopped and detained. Another rider, Samuel Prescott, took over and finished the job. It was all messy, chaotic, and very unepic. But the delay meant British troops reached Lexington just as militias were scrambling into position. Nerves were shot. Nobody knew who fired first. 1 musket cracked, then everyone opened fire. 8 colonists died. By the time the British moved on to Concord, the militias were ready. They pushed the redcoats back, sniped them from trees, and chased them all the way back to Boston. That wasn't the plan. That was war. And here's the butterfly twist. If Revere hadn't been slowed down, things might have gone differently. Maybe the British grabbed the weapons quietly. Maybe nobody died that day. Maybe revolution gets postponed or fizzles out. But a rainy night, a delayed message, and 1 badly timed musket shot turned a protest movement into a shooting war. A month later, George Washington took command. A year later, the Declaration of Independence was signed, all because a storm slowed a horse and someone panicked on a village green. So when people talk about the American Revolution, they usually skip the part where the whole thing kicked off thanks to wet roads, tired horses, and a nervous trigger finger. But that's how history works. Big changes often start with small messes. And in this case, a drizzle, a delay, and 1 unlucky musket changed the world. The volcano that froze the world. On April 10, 1815, Mount Tambora exploded, not metaphorically, literally. It was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history. Located on Sumbawa Island in Indonesia, Tambora didn't just spew lava, it shot 36 cubic miles of rock, ash, and gas into the sky. The blast was heard over 1,200 miles away. Entire villages vanished. Over 70,000 people died in the region. But Tambora's real damage came later. Ash and sulfur dioxide reached the stratosphere, wrapped around the Earth, and blocked sunlight. Global temperatures dropped, crops failed, rivers froze in June. Snow fell in New England during July. It was called the Year Without a Summer. In Europe, things got grim. Food shortages led to riots in France, Switzerland, and Britain. Prices skyrocketed. Starving families ate bark, rats, or anything that moved. In Ireland, a typhus outbreak killed tens of thousands. In China, floods hit one region while drought choked another. People didn't know why the weather had broken. There were no satellites, no warning systems, just cold, hunger, and superstition. Some blamed divine punishment. Others blamed sunspots. Nobody said volcano. Not yet. And in a strange twist, one of the coldest, darkest summers in history helped give birth to modern horror. In 1816, a group of bored writers vacationed at Lake Geneva. It rained nonstop. One night, stuck indoors, they challenged each other to write scary stories. Among them, Mary Shelley. That gloomy weather helped her imagine Frankenstein, a monster born during a real-world nightmare. Across the Atlantic, crop failures drove thousands of families to leave New England. Many moved west, reshaping U.S. settlement patterns. Some even say it nudged people toward industrialization faster. Machines don't care about failed harvests. Tambora's eruption didn't just kill tens of thousands directly. It shifted economies, migration, agriculture, and even culture, all from a volcano nobody outside Indonesia had even heard of at the time. One giant boom. No Instagram-worthy sunsets. Just a chain reaction of famine, fear, and fiction. And it all started with a mountain no one expected to explode. One volcano, 1 year, global chaos. That's a butterfly effect with bite. The sandwich that triggered a world war. June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary visits Sarajevo. Tensions are high. Serbia and Austria-Hungary hate each other. The Archduke's motorcade rolls through the city, wide open and barely guarded. A group of young assassins, members of the Black Hand, line the route. One throws a grenade. It bounces off the Archduke's car and explodes under the next one. Chaos. Civilians scream. The motorcade speeds away. The other assassins panic and scatter. The assassination attempt was supposed to be over. The Black Hand had failed. Police were closing in. Franz Ferdinand changed his plans, but no one told the driver. Sarajevo's layout was confusing. Tight streets, sharp corners, no GPS. The driver took a wrong turn into Franz Joseph Street. He tried to reverse. The car stalled. One of them, 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, fails to act. Mission botched. He wanders the city, frustrated and starving, and stops at a cafe for a sandwich. Meanwhile, the Archduke insists on visiting the wounded from the bombing. Bad idea. His driver takes a wrong turn. He tries to back up, right in front of the exact same cafe where Princip is eating. That's the story, anyway. The sandwich part may be a myth, but the timing, the location, and the sheer luck of it, very real. The Archduke, his wife, an open car, no guards, right there. Story told, Princip drops his sandwich, walks up, pulls a pistol, and shoots. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie die instantly. 2 bullets. That's it. Austria-Hungary blames Serbia. Russia backs Serbia. Germany backs Austria-Hungary. France joins in. Britain follows. Within weeks, World War I begins. Over 20 million people die. Empires collapse. Borders change. Communism rises. Fascism follows. World War II comes next. All of it links back to 2 bullets and one very unlucky detour. And yes, the sandwich detail could be real. Eyewitnesses whispered that Princip had stopped to eat. He didn't plan the second attempt. He just got lucky, if that's what you call accidentally starting a global bloodbath. The next time you're standing in line for lunch, just remember, someone once altered world history by getting hungry at the right or wrong time. 1 missed bomb, 1 sandwich, 1 world war. The message that came too late. December 7, 1941. Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Over 350 aircraft hit the U.S. Pacific Fleet. 8 battleships damaged or sunk. Over 2,400 Americans killed. The U.S. declared war the next day, and World War II officially went global. But here's the part most people forget. Japan tried to declare war first. They just failed miserably. Japanese diplomats in Washington were ordered to deliver a long memo, a 14-part message breaking off negotiations, exactly 30 minutes before the attack. The problem? The message was written in Japanese code and had to be decrypted, typed up, and delivered by hand. The 2 embassy staffers tasked with the job weren't exactly speed demons. They were working on old machines, under pressure, and kept making mistakes. It took them hours. By the time they finally delivered the memo to the US Secretary of State, the attack had already happened. And this wasn't just a paperwork error, it changed everything. Had the message arrived on time, the attack might have been seen as a military strike. Sneaky, sure, but technically fair. Instead, the US public saw it as a cowardly sneak attack during peace talks. The phrase "day of infamy" didn't just come from nowhere, it came from that delay. The fury was instant. Isolationist politicians flipped overnight. Congress voted for war with one opposing vote. Japan had hoped to scare the US into backing off. Instead, they enraged a sleeping giant. That one clerical failure helped fuel a war that cost over 70 million lives worldwide. Pearl Harbor led to the US entering Europe's war, firebombing Japan, and eventually dropping 2 atomic bombs. It changed geopolitics forever. And it all hinged on a slow typewriter and some very bad timing. When your boss says deadlines matter, they're not kidding. In this case, a late memo didn't just miss a meeting. It helped turn a regional conflict into the deadliest war in history. All because 2 guys couldn't get the paperwork in on time. The man who saved the world by doing nothing. September 26, 1983. The Cold War is burning hot. The US and Soviet Union are staring each other down, fingers twitching over nuclear buttons. Then, just after midnight, alarms start blaring in a Soviet bunker near Moscow. The satellite warning system reports 5 incoming US missiles, then 6, then more. The screen shows them headed straight for Soviet cities. Standard protocol: alert military command and prepare a full nuclear retaliation. But the man in charge that night is Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. He doesn't call it in. Petrov has minutes to decide. The system says this is real. The protocol says launch. But something doesn't sit right. The number of missiles seems too small for a real first strike. Radar isn't confirming anything. He figures, hopes, it's a glitch. So he sits, watches, waits. Nothing happens. No explosions. No war. Just silence. Turns out, the Soviet satellite mistook sunlight reflecting off clouds as a missile launch. The system had a blind spot. If Petrov had followed orders, the USSR would have launched its own nukes at the US. NATO would have fired back, and civilization might have ended before breakfast. Petrov filed a report and went home. He was scolded for not logging everything correctly. He wasn't a hero. He just didn't want to be the guy who killed everyone by mistake. His story didn't come out until the 1990s. No medal. No monument. Just one man, sitting in a dark room, deciding to wait a few extra minutes. And that's the butterfly effect in its quietest form. No war, no mushroom clouds, no body count, because one man trusted his gut over a blinking red light. So yeah, the Cold War didn't end with a bang. It almost started with one, but didn't. Thanks to a guy you've never heard of. Doing absolutely nothing. May 22, 2010. A Florida programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz posts on a Bitcoin forum. He's mining this weird digital currency, Bitcoin, and wants to see if it can buy something in the real world. So he makes an offer. I'll give 10,000 Bitcoins to anyone who brings me 2 pizzas. Someone takes the deal. They order him 2 Papa John's pizzas. Laszlo eats, posts a photo, and thanks the stranger. At the time, those 10,000 Bitcoins were worth about $41. No big deal, right? Except that was the first real-world purchase using cryptocurrency. The moment Bitcoin went from math experiment to something that could actually buy food. It wasn't a business transaction. It wasn't even a gamble. It was a guy testing the limits of digital code and accidentally setting the foundation for a trillion-dollar industry. The internet watched, mostly amused. A few people thought it was clever. Nobody thought it was history. But that post made Bitcoin real. It proved the concept. In that exact moment, cryptocurrency crossed a line from hobbyist curiosity to usable money. Not theoretical, not future tense, real, tangible, cheesy, and worth watching. Then Bitcoin's value skyrocketed. In 2011, 10,000 BTC could buy you a car. In 2013, a house. In 2017, a yacht. By 2021, those same 2 pizzas were worth over 600 million. Prices have dipped since then, but even today, those pizzas would cost tens of millions. And Laszlo? He's totally fine with it. He even did it again, for science. But the butterfly effect wasn't about Laszlo's snack. It was about proving that digital money could leave the internet and enter real life. That pizza led to businesses accepting Bitcoin, crypto markets exploding, and millions of people piling into digital currency. Today, Bitcoin is a global phenomenon. It fuels startups, scams, lawsuits, and government crackdowns. It created billionaires and burned fortunes. It's changed how we talk about value, ownership, and even freedom. And it all started with a guy in Florida who just didn't want to cook. So if you've ever bought crypto, mined it, lost your wallet key, or just pretended to understand how blockchain works, blame the pizza. Or thank it. Either way, history's first crypto purchase didn't happen in a bank or boardroom. It happened on a couch, with grease stains and a side of regret. One man, two pizzas, and a currency revolution.